you, right? Like you just decide what you want to do and you execute, right? It's the same thing for me. Only like I actually have a day job. No disrespect, but like you know what I mean? It's like I'm a lawyer.
I'm sorry, I don't have a day job.
Yeah. It's bad. It's all grainy. Hang on, I'm gonna turn on some more lights. I have to compete with the quality I'm looking at over here. Hang on.
I don't know if you know what a Yeti is, but
I don't, but it looks pretty cool. All right, well, I'm gonna do battle. I've got my Data Pelican.
Data Pelican. Well, I'm representing clients.
There you go. That's smart. Good for you.
Because a lot of people don't spend that kind of time with their webinar. And the one thing is that I got to know you. You ain't gonna get it, buddy. March 1st.
I don't like getting outmaned, man. This is not how I roll. So it tells you everything you need to know right here. Like I just can't handle that you look so much better than I do right now. Right? It's like it's bugging me. It's bugging me. I always have to look the best. I need the best setup. I need the best background. But go ahead.
Dude, this is intentional. I knew it would mess with you.
It does.
Trust
it's
me.
In my head, man. It's deeply in my head. That was not what I was trying to do.
You have a folding chair. Hey everybody, it's Rob Seaver, Executive Director with Leads Counsel. I'm bringing you this week's on-air podcast. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done one of these. This is the way to come back with one. This is where I can bring you somebody that absolutely is going to bring the volume to the mic. I love this guy. We have been on the stage several times talking about his passion. He is none other than Eric J. Troutman. We're going to find out what that J stands for. What I do know is he is the czar of TCPA. I went out and I actually looked up what czar actually means. And I got to be honest with you, it just means he's powerful in something. And we're going to say it's in TCPA for this one. Eric Troutman, thank you for joining us today. I'm super excited about it. Let's get this thing rolling.
Rob, great intro, man. Finally, somebody gives me the respect that I so richly deserve. This is what I like to see. All right, let's rock, man.
You know what? I'm glad that you don't think highly of yourself. We're going to try to spend the next 40 or so minutes building you back up because I know how fragile you are.
I am.
Eric, look, I did a little bit of snooping because your bio on the Squire Patton Boggs website and some of the other bios that I found out there, they're so lacking. They're so short. 3 or 4 words a piece. It was difficult for me to pull anything out of. What I did find out, and I may be wrong about this, is that you went to school, UCLA, and also to Berkeley to get the degree to allow you to do the things that you're doing today. Am I right about that? Am I wrong? What's going on?
I mean, look, before I address that, and I will, okay, I just have to point out that your background is incredible. Your beard, Rob, is better than my beard right now, okay? And I'm a manly alpha lion. This is my mane. I don't like seeing somebody with a better mane. Rob, you look great. I love what you're doing. Okay, so yeah, look, I went to Berkeley as an undergrad, best public university in the world. I'm rocking the Cal gear back here still. Loved Cal, loved my experience there. Really, I'm happy to tell you the story as to why I went to Cal if you want to hear it.
This is yours, man. You do it. I want to hear it.
So I'll tell you the story. So it's a little known. This is a true story. So I was like a nerdy kid, which is not going to surprise anybody. And I was in 4th grade. It's an absolutely true. 4th grade. I'm reading an encyclopedia in class because school bores me. So I'm sitting in the back reading an encyclopedia, as is my wont. And I'm looking at the periodic table of the elements because I'm just like kind of nerding out. And I see this element, Californium. And I'm like, wow, that sounds like California. Right, so I go to the California, I pull the CA, and look it up, and it turns out that the first words in the description are an element made at the University of California at Berkeley. And I said, if they are making elements at Berkeley, for God's sake, I am going to Berkeley. Like, I don't know what that means, but they are making elements, for God's sake. I thought only like cosmic deities could make elements, and so that was it. I was going to Berkeley. I remember, I went to I grew up, impoverished. I think that's a matter of public record already. And I was going to this terrible public school. And I told my guidance counselor when I was in 9th grade, I said, I'm going to Berkeley. And he just laughs in my face. Like, yeah, man, okay. As time comes, I apply to one school, only one school. I don't know any better. Like no one around me has ever gone to college, right? And obviously I get in. I did okay on my SATs, it turns out. But it was, looking back on that whole experience, this just kind of like kid with, no concept of what he was doing, but just absolutely bullheaded, determined that I was going to do that and only that. I don't know. It's kind of a neat story. Take what you will from it, and glean who I am as a human being from it. But that's the truth, and so I ended up at Cal.
Did you know? I mean, where did the law thing come in? Was that early on? Was it while you were at Berkeley? I mean, what happened there?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to be an attorney, at least as a stepping stone. So I've always been obsessed with the concept.
Stepping stone?
To world domination, of course.
World domination, of course.
Look, no, I've always been obsessed with the concept of truth, right? The concept of subjective versus objective truth. And to me, the idea of being a trial lawyer, where you are asking 12 people that know nothing of the facts of a case to determine what is the truth as a matter of law. And that's what you have to think of a trial, right? A trial is a determination of truth to be rendered as a judgment as a matter of law. And when you're in that courtroom, there are only two people who are allowed to speak as to what the truth is. And that is you and the opposing counsel. So I always wanted to be a trial lawyer. I was obsessed with it from a philosophical standpoint. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to be a trial lawyer, been very successful. But honestly, I always saw myself eventually in politics, and that may still happen. Who's to say? But I always felt that if you were going to be a lawmaker, if you were going to be a congressman or a senator, you had to be a lawyer first, because how could you possibly make law if you've never practiced law? And I dare say, in my opinion, one of the reasons why Congress doesn't work is because so few lawyers are in Congress. You wouldn't take your car to get fixed by somebody that's not a mechanic. Why would you trust somebody to make a law that's not a lawyer? To me, it's irrational. But that's why I went to law school, to be a trial lawyer and eventually a politician. We'll see what happens.
Somebody running the country right now that may not be aware of the law.
Well, the executive branch is different, though, right? As an executive,
okay.
Believe it or not, right? I'm a big believer in separation of powers. I'm a big believer that the different branches do different things. And the legislative branch is supposed to be full of wisdom and virtue and come up with the law that we all live by. The executive branch is a little different. I mean, frankly, you can be a bit of a meathead and be president and just execute, right? Your job as a president is to execute on the law as given to you by Congress. The problem with Trump and really every recent president is that they think that they have the ability to write law, to create policy, to ask Congress to do something. And if you read the Federalist Papers, of course, the very definition of tyranny is to allow an executive branch authority to create law. You cannot execute a law of your own creation, because then you're a king, right? And to me, that's the problem with the recent presidencies, is they don't understand the limitation. Their job is to faithfully execute to the best of their ability the constitutional mandate of the president to go forward with the law as written. But hey, look, this is probably not what we're here to talk about.
No, but I think it's interesting. I mean, because it does go back to the core of who you are, because as I've known you for the last few years and just have watched you off the stage, on the stage, through your writing, and we'll get into a lot of that here in a little bit, but you've been very consistent with protecting that law at its purest level. And I don't think anybody could actually challenge that about you if they wanted to hit you for anything. It could not be on your respect of that, because I think that that's been front and center. And we'll talk about, I think, very briefly about the Supreme Court and how it's now ruling on something that has been almost your professional lifelong, venture so far. And I think that, as I get into things like freedom of speech, which you were so adamant SCOTUS ruling that basically freedom of speech is really at the core of everything that this thing is talking about. And I watched you talk about freedoms and talk about the law and how they intersect. I found that very interesting, almost to the point where I was learning something, Eric Troutman.
Heaven forbid, man. Heaven forbid. None of that.
To accuse you of actually teaching me something at some point. So you've always said, okay, being involved as an attorney, as a lawyer, that was where you saw your path. You got into a very prestigious school as it relates to your career. It's not the most traditional path that most people. So you only applied to the one school,
That's
and
right.
you were basically accepted.
There's
And
an alternate universe somewhere where Eric Troutman does not get into Cal, and I'm like a mechanic someplace. I mean, like literally, it was an all or nothing shot. I don't know why I did that. Obviously, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And my kids, and I have three boys, the Pelicans as I call them. They got me this mug for Father's Day because I'm the
Data
data
Pelican.
Pelican. They're the Pelicans. I'm the data Pelican. They're going to apply to more than one college. Okay, I do not advocate anyone take my approach to this.
Well, they won't need a SAT score moving forward, so you're going to be okay with that.
That's a good point.
I don't know whether that's going to be the case or not, but I know a lot of schools are doing it. So you got out. What did you do? And I don't know, and I think a lot of people don't know really what that path of school, getting taking the exam, getting accepted. I did see on some of your things that you had worked some of the admissions and some of the things that you had done both Washington and in California. So what was that path like? Kind of help me understand, and I don't have to stop at every single stop, but really what's the journey to get you to where you are now, the czar of TCPA? How did that
Sure.
help me fill those gaps?
Yeah, well, it's not going to surprise you to hear, right? I'm not one of these guys that took a couple years off to go travel through Europe or something. I've always been a laser focused kind of person. So I graduated Cal in 3 years. I immediately went to UCLA for law school. I was a practicing attorney by the time I was 24. I was trying cases. As a first year, I went to Bakersfield of all places because I wanted to. This is true. I wanted to try cases. I wanted to try jury trials. And I did not want to do criminal law, right? Because if you think about it, right, I'm not the kind of guy that wants to put people in jail, but I don't want to defend scumbags either, right? I mean, that's just not for me. I'm a purist. I like the law. I like truth, right? And I wanted to be in the courtroom, but I wanted to do it on the civil side. So the worst that could happen is somebody owes somebody money. And so I started trying cases out in Bakersfield, just ridiculous, tiny little trials, but like it was important to me to have that opportunity, and I did. I did that for a couple of years, and then I got picked up at a firm here in Orange County, a financial services firm, good firm, regional firm. And they recruited me, and I said, look, I'll come down. I will join your firm. I like Bakersfield. I'm having fun, big fish, small pond kind of situation. But you got to let me try cases. And they said, no problem. And within 3 months of joining the new firm, I tried my first case. The head of the firm came down from San Francisco to watch me try the case, saw me try it, and said, okay, I don't care if you're 27, you're a top drawer trial lawyer. You go with it. And so that was, I thought, to be honest with you, I thought that was my legal career. I thought I was going to stay there. They paid me next to nothing, but it wasn't about money. It was about getting experience. I figured I would just try a bunch of cases and then, start my political career. And that's probably, frankly, how things would have played out, except it just randomly enough, I was trying a bunch of fraud trials against the Armenian mafia, of all things, up in Glendale for a financial institution. It will remain unnamed. And the in-house counsel flew out to watch me try the cases. She was a real nice lady. We got to be friends. My wife got to know her pretty well. And a couple months later, kind of out of the clear blue yonder, she gives me a call and she says, hey, Eric, we've got this big class action with one of these big firms down in LA, but we're having a hard time getting opposing counsel to call us back. Do you know this guy? And opposing counsel is this guy named Josh Squire, right? Who I know very, very well. I knew him well then. Now, of course, we've been litigating against each other for, a dozen years. And I said, yeah, no problem. 20 minutes later, I had the extension. 4 hours later, I had the case, right? My very first TCPA class action. At the time, as I've explained, I'm a trial lawyer, right? I'm not a complex litigator. And I'm very honest and very transparent. I get on the phone with her and I'm like, hey, look, honored that you think of me, but I don't do class litigation. I'm not a complex litigator. I've never handled one of these before. She says, you're a smart guy. You'll figure it out.
What age was this? 28, 27?
I would have been about 30 then.
30, okay.
And so we have about, I don't know, 40 interviews. Ends up being a multi-million dollar settlement. we're up one step from the top of the house at one of the biggest companies in America. She becomes the in-house TCPA subject matter expert handling all their litigation across the country. And here I am, 31, 32 years old, and now I am national counsel for one of the largest companies in the nation, handling all their TCPA cases across the country. So once that happened, I learned a lot, right? That was kind of that trial and error period. You're talking like 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, right? It's new, it's nascent, and you're making the law. And obviously, I just completely fell in love with this. I mean, it's the most interesting area of law as far as I'm concerned. I can't think of anything more interesting. That the stakes are the TCPA.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, think about it. The stakes are incredibly high. The procedural postures are so fascinating, where you've got nationwide classes, but you've got substantive issues that are different across the class. You've got pure ascertainability arguments in some instances. You've got huge substantive defenses, massive constitutional dimension. Things are moving 1,000 miles a minute, right? 7 new cases a day on average are coming out, and you're trying to digest all of this, find kind of what the core is, right? What's the meat? What's critical in every specific case, so that you can best leverage the cutting edge arguments for your client in real time. And again, when I first started off, just like when everybody first starts off, you're not going to know everything, right? You got to learn through tough experience. Not everything is intuitive. But having been lead counsel now in 150 nationwide class actions and handled well over 1,000 of these things individually, you kind of get the sense that you kind of like see through walls, right? Like exactly what's going to happen next. Exactly what's going to matter, and you get to this place where you kind of just like transcend being a regular attorney, and you really are just moving pieces around like Neo in the Matrix, right? It's neat. It's really kind of fun to have experienced the arc of the career that I have, having gone from a kid not like anybody else, like trying to figure this stuff out, to really kind of having committed myself to it heart and soul, and gotten to a place where it's like, man, I don't know where I end and the TCPA begins anymore, because I'm so kind of immersed in the fabric of this law. And and we can talk through the developments in the TCPA world, et cetera. But it's been a heck of a ride, and it's been a lot of fun. And obviously, I never saw this coming from that very first case I picked up.
By the way, in your bio, it says more than 70 national TCPA class actions. So you might want to update that number, make sure that it's accurate. I wouldn't want anybody to think any less of you.
Oh yeah, no, that's way out of date, which is unlike me. You would think I would keep this up to date. But I have such a public persona now. There's so many places you can draw my bio. I can't like keep everything up to date anymore. It's like,
well, I remember, I want to go back just a little bit because we're hopping around here, but
sure.
I knew about TCPA land. I was actually doing a lot of regurgitating the stuff that you were pushing out. I mean, to me, I have been in this role as executive director for a little over 5 years, just under 6. And it was clear to me that TCPA was going to be one of those topics that I could find information about. But they were from Law 360 or ACA International. I came into this and at one point, I think maybe we'll break this down for the audience, but I came into this post FCC ruling, pre-ACA ruling. And so when I got into this, basically I had to catch up and I had to understand what was going on. And it doesn't sometimes help just asking some of our members, because if I ask an all web leads, or I ask a Lending Tree, or I'm going to get a very different or slightly different, at least, understanding of what I should know about TCPA and what's important. But it was interesting. I was out there and all of a sudden I got this alert that, hey, look, this one website was basically posting stuff. And it got to be where I kind of became reliant on it. And I was starting to just share all of that stuff. And it became almost so ubiquitous with my weekly news that it was hard to see the difference between the TCPA website and the Leads Counsel website. But it was something that I fell in love with. I reached out to the firm that you were working for, and I just wanted to say, hey, look, I'm interested in what you're producing, and I want to get closer to that. And I remember a LeadsCon was coming up, and and I'd already booked all the talent for the show, and Warren Pickett from LeadsCon sent me this email, and I had to laugh because it was this guy telling me that if I really wanted to put somebody on the stage that knew TCPA, just to give you a call at some point. And I was just like, look at this arrogant ass. Just like, I've got 18 different TCPA attorneys just, telling me anything I need to know. Why is this guy telling me he's the preeminent source of all things TCPA? Now, fast forward several years now, or at least two years or so, 2.5 years. All I can tell you is that I get it. I really get it. And this is to not take away at all anything of the fine attorneys that I work with, that I always appreciate when they contribute. But even those people will agree that you've done something in this space that nobody else has done. And I think that does separate you from the pack, in the sense that nobody can sit out there and say that they're doing more to educate the public as it relates to TCPA, Telephone Consumer Protection Act. Nobody's doing more to educate the industry, the consumer, the regulator, the lawmaker on TCPA than Eric J. Troutman. Is that a safe statement? I feel good saying it.
Well, I appreciate that, Rob, and I think that's objective fact. And look, there's
It's objective. Did you say an objective fact? It's not subjective, right?
It is objective. No, let's go back to the difference between objective truth and subjective truth, right? People feel things, right? People feel things, and the things that people feel lead them to make very strange and sometimes disloyal decisions. But we'll leave that alone, right? But the objective truth is that which is, it is what it is, right? And you look at the reality of the fact that I've written over 600 blogs over the course of the last 2 years, appeared on endless numbers of webinars, and I do all these things, and I never put any barriers around my content, right? So many other firms, I don't know why they do this, right? You have to sign up to get some information, you have to provide your name, you have to agree to contact, and why? Like, why are you doing this, right? Like, if you're going to share, you should share with a grateful heart, and give all that you have. And I this is what I do, as you know, right? I'm an attorney. I've got a great team. I'm blessed to be at Squire, Patton Boggs, one of the finest litigation law firms on the planet, right? What does that afford me? That affords me a tremendous team of experts that can assist, right, with all of my great clients. And it gives me the latitude to share information, to see something, to analyze it, to sit on high, so to speak, as the czar, as I like to call myself, and give information and break things down. And you're right, the response, of course, has been amazing. I'm in contact with seemingly everybody that lives in this ecosystem, from the plaintiffs' lawyers to the commissioners at the FCC to the legislators, obviously to my defense brethren, and of course the entire ecosystem of callers, carriers. All of these folks have come to rely on the information that I provide. They're not all my clients, but I'm happy to share with them. I'm happy to interact with them. I'm happy to learn from them, just as they're learning from me. And it's become, tremendously, amazingly, surprisingly, shockingly, bizarrely, a community, really a community here at tcpaworld.com. And I cannot tell you that this was my grand scheme. I can't. I wish I could, that this was what my plan was all along. But
I was curious. Yeah, I was curious about that because I came into you, or at least I became aware of you when it was tcpaland.com, and you guys were producing a lot of content, and then shifted to Squire, Patton Boggs, and I know that it was clear you had talked to me about the ownership of TCPA World and where that brand is and the vision that you had seen. But I mean, how do you balance? Because that was one of the questions that I have on just a short list of things that I really wanted to ask. You've defended 100 plus now class actions in some way or some form or fashion, been involved with them, personally involved in over 1,000 individual TCPA cases. You have hours you have to build. God, I know that as an attorney, that is the lifeblood of every attorney out there. I have a certain number I got to bill every month. That's just how you get measured. And yet you still contribute countless hours. And I mean, I try to write a small weekly newsletter where I'm regurgitating 80% of it just to write 3 or 4 new paragraphs a week. I find it exhausting. So how do you, with all of those things, and still very young in your career, even with political aspirations, whatever that ends up being, where do you find that? First of all, why TCPA land or world? And did you see the brand building capability early on? I would imagine you did. And subsequently, how do you get into that, find the time to do it, scale it in the way that you've done it, and then support it as you continue to do, your day job?
Well, you just asked about 50 questions.
I'm good at it.
So let me do my best.
Too and be good.
Yeah, let me do my best to kind of unpackage some of this. So look, I'll just give you the story how the whole thing started, right? As I've already explained, I'm national counsel for started off with one big company, ended up being several big companies. For a while there, I was literally national TCPA counsel for like 5 of the 10 biggest banks in the nation simultaneously. Good luck pulling that one off anybody else on the planet. And of course, when you do that, right, you're building you've got this huge team, right? You have to. I can't do this all myself. And the team was getting bigger and bigger, and I had to assure quality, and I was obsessed with quality. And I'm reviewing every pleading, I'm looking at every discovery response, and I'm trying to sit down and have weekly meetings with this ever-growing team and break down, these are the things you need to know now. This is the newest case that just came out. Let's talk about how we're gonna exploit this. We're gonna use this. And I found myself on a daily basis, right? I've always, since 2008, I've read every single TCPA case as it comes down every single day. It's just, some people wake up and go jogging every morning. I wake up and read every single TCPA case every morning. I don't know why, but I do. I just do. It's just who I am. I don't understand why I do it any more than you understand why I do it. Nobody knows why they do anything, right? We all think we know ourselves so well, but the truth is we don't. And so I couldn't tell you why it is that I'm obsessed to read every case every day, but I do. And so very soon, by 2011, I was breaking down every case every day for my team in these little snippets. And it didn't take long for me to realize that, hey, look, all I have to do is expand this little snippet that I've already written summarizing the case into, add a little content before, add a little content after, and boom, I've got myself a blog. I didn't launch it. If you go back, you can find writings from me as early as like 2014, 2013, but I didn't really get wholesale into it until I left the regional firm and joined my first national firm, and I started to blog a little more adamantly. I will tell you, when I left my first national firm to my second national firm, that was when I thought, you know what, there's really an opportunity here to build a brand, to just blow the doors off of this thing. I mean, I've already kind of mastered the TCPA. At this point, there's a lot of Johnny-come-latelys, right? A lot of pretenders out there that were starting to jump on the bandwagon, 2016, 2017, and try to label themselves TCPA experts too. And I'll be honest, like I'm pretty territorial, right? I see that. I take that as a personal insult. Like I have given my heart and soul to this, for X number of years. I'm a smart guy and I've dedicated my entire career to it. And you think you're just going to walk in here and call yourself a TCPA expert? Oh, no. Oh, that's not the way this is going to work. And so I thought, how do I best differentiate myself? How do I best show off, to the wide world, like the capabilities that I and my team have that nobody else has? And of course, that's what led to TCPA land. There's a dark and tragic tale there at the end of it. Just, look, big law, it's nasty business, man. It's full of, I'm not going to say bad people, that's too strong, but, people with agendas, people with knives and big teeth, and people that think that what they feel is better than what you feel, and that they're going to take advantage, right? I mean, that is, at the end of the day, the big law is built on exploiting people, taking advantage of people, and partners are made by stabbing other partners in the back every single day, every day in big law. So it's not like it's a story of woe and sadness. I mean, it is what it is, right? That is the big law monster. But honestly, TCPA Land was like a beta version for what would eventually become TCPA World. And so, everything, I believe very deeply, everything happens precisely the way it is supposed to happen. I'm not sure, like, I'm Candide, that believes that we live in the best possible universe or anything. I'm not trying to get Voltaire on us, but at the end of the day, I do believe everything happens for a reason. And so, everything kind of materialized to a point where when I got to Squire and I got all the bells and whistles, the highest end law firm on the planet with all the resources and all the litigators that could be thrown at me, and a limitless, essentially, budget and complete free reign to do what I wanted with TCPA World, I said, okay, now we're going to really do this. And so, 2 articles a day, 3 articles a day, TCPA World podcast, getting the commissioners on, former congressmen on, really kind of taking it to the next level, opening it up, letting plaintiffs' lawyers kind of come on the podcast, say what they want to say. It's obviously it's become just the traffic we're driving on the website is insane. Obviously we've got a ton of followers. I don't know, it's just been great. It's been a great experience. And of course, guys like you, Rob, have been big supporters and opened up your stage and your resources, and I'm very grateful.
Well, I mean, it's mutual because I leverage what you're doing as well, and it's helped grow the council. I cannot say that, and I don't send me a bill for the commission, please, but I can't say that I can't directly tie some of our membership to your initiatives, because I believe that by taking the things that you've been doing and leveraging them in our output, or sharing them in our social instances, they directly can be tied, especially now that I'm monitoring a lot of how that first click attribution in the ecosystem comes from. I can go back to an article that I shared that had your footprint and your fingerprints all over it. And so, quite honestly, I appreciate that from, the bottom of my heart. And I will tell you also, I have asked several people to speak, to be on the stage, to do a webinar, to do something like this. And 100% of the time, Eric J. Troutman, you have said yes. And so I certainly appreciate that. What does the J stand for? I tried to find that, by the way.
Well, it's interesting. No one's actually asked me before. The J stands for John. Just John. Yeah, just Eric John Troutman. Very simple name.
Well, we all know the myth behind it now, so not so elusive, Mr. John Troutman. Tell me this: where did the name or the tag CZAR come from? I clearly looked up, like, oh shoot, he's a leader in Russia. Not a good one. But outside of that, like, where does this come from?
So I don't like to name names, but I will here, because it deserves direct attribution. The guy's name is Joe Liniak. He was a partner of mine when I first went to join a national firm, and he comes to me one day and he says, Eric, you're not just like, once he kind of got to understand my practice and what I was doing and my team and kind of seeing all the work I was doing, he says, Eric, you're not just another TCPA expert. You're like the CZAR. And I remember when he told me, I found it so jarring. Like, I had a very emotional response to it. And I wanted, it was like someone throws mud on you, right? You want to like take a shower. Like, no, get it off, man, get it off. I don't know what that even means. I'm not that, but I had a very visceral response to it, and it was very negative, I didn't like it at all.
Did he mean it to be negative the way he said it?
No, he meant it as a positive. Like
yeah,
you're the king, you're the guy, you're the man in the space. And so but he kept saying it, right? And it's like every time I saw him, he'd be like, oh, there goes the CZAR, there goes the CZAR. And it was weird because it took me a while for it to register. I never used it until I actually launched TCPA Land the following year. And I just remember thinking, look, if this name, if this word has such a jarring impact, a visceral impact on me, well, then it's something that's going to last with people that are encountering me for the first time. And it might not be a positive response initially. And that's okay, right? I'm fine trying to overcome. I'd rather you remember me, but not necessarily like me out of the gate. And I'll just have to kind of overcome that and show, wait a second, no, I actually know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to live up to this name. You're going to understand why it is I can carry it. Than for somebody to just have never remembered me to begin with. And so, we adopted it. I've run with it. I don't run away from it at all anymore. As you know, I use it constantly. And I still think I get kind of a mixed response, right? Probably 70% think I'm a knucklehead and 30% think it's great. But even those that think I'm a knucklehead, like, have to pause and take notice, and then they're willing to give me, for whatever reason, the opportunity to demonstrate why it is that I'm not this strange person that you might initially think that I am. And it's been,
I
yeah,
used to fight it, man, because I don't know if you remember, it was at a DNC.com conference, I think in Scottsdale actually, and you come strolling in with Pooja, who was, I think, working with you at the time, and she's now with Loan Depot. But I remember when I first met you, I felt like this need for some reason to say, look, dude, could you tone it down a little bit? Like, I want to be able to use you, but I'm struggling with the showmanship. Like, I'm like, look, why do we need more content in your bio than the actual content that you're writing at the time? And you told me, hey, I don't know HTML or something, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I tried to bridle that, but then I realized somewhere along the way, man, just enjoy it. I mean, like, for me, I love the showmanship. I love the fact that people will show up to see you. I love the fact that you entertain as well as you educate, which is important to me. When I'm sharing the stage with somebody, I want to make sure that, one, the heavy lifting isn't on my shoulders to try to make something out of nothing, but also the fact that when people do dedicate their time, because I'm real respectful of time, I think that that's probably the best commodity that we have. When they give us an hour of their time, or whatever that time slot is that they're sitting down saying, you've got my attention now, it's our obligation to deliver. And you deliver. I can say, I'm not just, stroking the ego here. This is from several times where you and I sit down and say, how can we produce something that is memorable? And I believe that that's part of the DNA, part of the shtick, but I also believe it's also part of who you are.
And that's, look, it's a dangerous line I walk, not to be, too self-analytic here, but the truth is, everything I do, I try to do from the heart. Everything I do, I try to be my genuine best self and do with integrity. And that's somewhat inconsistent with donning a giant top hat and calling yourself the czar, right? And there's a bit of a tension there. But I think that's where people are drawn to ultimately, is that the shtick is an inch thick and the heart goes all the way to the center. And I do this out of love, and as much as I do it for any other purpose, right? I mean, as I told you early on, I'm not a guy that's driven by money. Money is not what drives me. It's not what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's not what animates me to write 600 blogs. None of that is driven by greed or ambition. And I think people understand that about me. And I think it kind of makes me strangely alluring that I really am just so desperately caught up with wanting to understand concepts and then wanting to break them down, simplify, take away barriers, make them easy to understand, and share with everybody else so that everybody else can have that wonderful moment of discovery that I get to have every morning when I wake up. To me, that's what animates me. And I really sincerely believe that people are drawn to that. I mean, I think.
No doubt they are. I mean, it's nice to be able to watch this evolution, because I feel like I caught the early stages, or the earlier stages of this, and I'm now just reaping the benefits of it and enjoying it. We've only got a few more minutes. I don't know how much time you have, but if you're dead at the top of the hour, we'll go ahead and try to clip this. But some big stuff has happened in TCPA world, and it's not just the day-to-day stuff, but we've got this thing at the attention at the highest level. If we can't get it right there, it's never going to be right. And so I know that I've read a couple of things post SCOTUS review and outcome, and you've used the words disappointing. As you take this next dive, because I know that you're going to get into consumer privacy and some other things as you continue to evolve this, but as it relates to TCPA, you saw it really threatened. You saw that this thing could literally go away. I heard you talk about it from the stage. And this Supreme Court review was going to probably be as close to its termination as you thought it could ever get. But then I've read some of your recent reviews and your review of like just the ruling in general. In fact, I remember, Eric, as I was reading your play-by-play as it was being announced, and you were doing live blogging, and I could hear the passion, I could hear, you know, the frustration, I could hear just the interest and the excitement of this really happening. Help me understand a little bit of this. Like, how did you go into this? I know it's a multi-question here, but how did you go into it? What was it like actually waiting for that time where the Supreme Court reviewed, and then ultimately, as you were reviewing it live and then subsequently have posted things like disappointing? Where are you now?
Well, I mean, look, going into this, I was of the view that the TCPA was absolutely unconstitutional, had to be struck down, and I was right. I was right. The Supreme Court invented new doctrine for the first time ever under the First Amendment, threw out all existing doctrine and invented something that never existed before called an equal treatment First Amendment case, converting the First Amendment, which is supposed to protect speech, into an ironing board that does nothing more but level out speech and essentially turn the First Amendment into a tool that business rivals can use to silence each other. It was, I mean, disappointing is putting it mildly. It was disgusting, is what it was. And you know, when you've got 9 justices up there who are supposed to protect our freedom, and no one is paying attention to the ultimate bait and switch ever, where you've got Justice Kavanaugh writing some article acting like he's protecting Americans by defending their right to use their cell phones, and what he's actually doing is bulldozing 70 years of the most precious and important Supreme Court jurisprudence that's designed to protect our fundamental liberties that have ever existed, and they're just getting thrown out the window in a little like I've said it's like when CZAR, right, would send the people off to go watch the Lions in the Coliseum while he worked with the Senate to rewrite and take away power. It's exactly what happened. Oh, look, you don't like robocalls. Look over here. While we take away your power and we give it to the government and say the government can now silence all speakers so long as they do it equally, essentially taking away the ability of the private sector to speak should the government so choose. It was terrible. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. It was an unforeseeable result. I didn't see it coming because it turns doctrine on its head. And I'm hoping against hope that maybe just they didn't realize what they were doing, or I mean, that doesn't make sense. Of course, they're the Supreme Court of the United States. They have to know what they're doing. And if they don't, then they shouldn't be there doing that, in my opinion. They should find a different job if they're not going to pay attention. So I have to assume that they knew exactly what they were doing. And that means that 7 justices of the United States Supreme Court feel that it is okay for the government to take away our speech completely, so long as they do it in a way that is content neutral. That is to say, so long as they do it equally. Yeah, no, that's tragic, man. And as we've talked about before, I'm a purist. I look at legal doctrine and I say I'm the opposite of result oriented, right? I don't start with this is where I want to get to. How do I get there? I start with these are the doctrines. Okay. Doctrine number 1, thou shalt apply strict scrutiny to a content specific restriction. Doctrine number 2, if the statute fails, the First Amendment says you cannot enforce the statute. That really should have driven the result. And instead, they threw away premise number 2, adopted a new premise, created an entirely new area of law, and weakened, if not completely destroyed, First Amendment protection for Americans forever. So, yeah, that's
why
a
are
problem.
more people not up in arms?
Because people don't pay attention, is the truth. And because you have to be pretty bright, dare I say, to get it, right? Like you have to actually understand First Amendment law and look at it, read it carefully, and care, right? And remember, the reason why there's no premium on truth in this nation is that it doesn't pay, right? So why is it that no one's up in arms? Because who's motivated to be up in arms, right?
Yeah.
Who gets paid to talk about this stuff? I don't get paid to talk about it. I talk about it because I've got a platform and I care, right? Why don't other people care? I don't know. I mean, I'm not here to answer that question, but I mean, there's simply no question that that is what the Supreme Court did. They took a dissent by Justice Scalia from 2005, and they turned it into binding precedent that the First Amendment is nothing more than equal protection for ideas. That is not what the First Amendment is. The First Amendment says, Congress, you shall not abridge speech. Not that you can abridge speech so long as it's equal. You shall not do it. And now it's as if the Constitution has been amended by the Supreme Court. But it is what it is.
So I don't want to take away the thunder from an upcoming webinar with one of our partners here. They've agreed to hear another case, very specifically about the automation side of some of this. Do you feel like that was a head scratcher to you, or do you feel like, maybe we can fix some of the wrongs, maybe we can right some of the wrongs? I don't know. And because clearly I don't think that, and I mean, this is no hit on the FCC, but this, since ACA has been something that's just been a dangling thing out there, like in each court has ruled differently on what the definition of one is. Did you ultimately see it going in this direction, or did you see it getting to this quickly?
Well, I mean, there's a clear circuit split, right? And it is the Supreme Court's job to resolve issues of substantive disagreement between circuits. And you're not going to see a clearer circuit split in the law than you have here. I mean, you've got two circuits going one direction, two circuits going exactly the opposite direction, two circuits leaning this direction, two circuits leaning this direction, three circuits directly in the middle. I mean, you are never going to see a fractured landscape, as I wrote on TCPA World, the way you see this. I mean, it might be unprecedented. This might be the clearest circuit split in the history of law in America. So it is the Supreme Court's job to fix that. So on the one hand, I guess I'm gratified that they're going to do their job. That makes me happy. On the other hand, I'm still so wounded, frankly, and let down and disappointed, if not outright betrayed, from what happened just last week in Barr versus AAPC. I mean, I'm feeling a little distrustful. I'll be straight with you. I'm not. All of a sudden, I'm like, you know what, Supreme Court? No, leave TCPA alone. You don't want to take it seriously. You don't want to read it and understand it. You want to use it as a pawn. Just stay
They're
out of it.
stopping robocalls, Eric. Eric John.
Well, maybe not. But you can stop robocalls all you want, but don't take away our rights to do it. I mean, it's just as simple as that. But I mean, look, they should be able to rule on this pretty narrow question of law that, unlike the Barr case, shouldn't really have any implications outside of the TCPA. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but it should be pretty straightforward, applicable only to the TCPA. And look, do they broaden the statute? Do they narrow it? I mean, I don't know. It is, to your point, they have taken the issue away from the FCC. That's not a bad thing. That's not a knock on the FCC. I think, again, there's a clear circuit split. The Supreme Court says it's my job to fix that. Okay. I think business should be a little downhearted, because with the FCC under Chairman Pai potentially about to sunset in the November elections, there was an opportunity here. I think there's very little chance, maybe a zero chance, that the FCC does anything now that the Supreme Court is looking at the issue. So, the issue is now in the hands of the Supremes, when it could have been in the hands of the FCC.
I just want to finish up. I ask a couple questions here. Why did you decide to go on the defense side versus the plaintiff side? Was there ever a question for you?
There was. Oh no, there was. I mean, look, I went to Berkeley, right? I mean, that should tell you kind of where I lean in my heart, right?
I know, right?
But and look, I definitely viewed myself potentially as a voice for the little guy, but it happened to be very, very early on in my career as a defense attorney. I assumed I'd go defense because at the minimum I'd have to get the skills. I'd have to learn how to be a great lawyer before I could go off on my own and defend people or help people. But I realized very early on, actually, I am far, far more powerful at helping consumers and people on this end of the V than I am on the other. Because when I'm representing X multinational company, X massive conglomerate, and I'm Eric Troutman and I'm the CZAR and I wear this hat, and I pick up the phone and I call their in-house counsel and I say, hey, stop it, guess what? They stop it. And so being on this side gives me so much more power to actually see when something is actually wrong, not hunt down ambulance chase style nonsense where you're just trying to make a buck off of somebody and frankly exploiting people, which is what 98% of the plaintiff's lawyers actually do. They're just exploiting people, right? They're not really trying to right a wrong. Now, in their hearts, they might want to right wrongs. They might be oriented properly. I'm not saying they're scumbags, but I'm saying that the opportunity to right wrongs is so rare when you're on the plaintiff side, because you so rarely get the full transparency. You're just stuck with whatever story you get told by whoever it is that walks in off the street, right? Whereas when you are representing these big companies and you're given access and you can do audits and you can review what's actually happening on the ground, that gives you tremendous visibility, tremendous power to make sure that these companies are compliant. And so on the one hand, I really feel that I can help people best by helping to make sure that the biggest companies in this nation understand the law and follow the law. And I can also say, on the other hand, that whenever I see like the media narratives beating up on certain companies that I know to be, my clients and to be extremely compliance oriented and really care about the law, because if they didn't, I wouldn't be their lawyer if they didn't care about the law. I mean, if you take anything from this podcast, you should take away, I take this stuff extremely seriously, and I don't want to see anybody trampling on this. So if you're hiring me to be your attorney, you can bet your bottom dollar I'm going to give you my best advice every day, and I'm going to help you to actually comply with the law. So when I see my clients, these big companies, the media suggesting they don't care about consumers, they don't care about the law, I mean, that steams me, right? I know they care. I know they care. I work with these guys day in, day out to make sure that they're compliant. But in any event, yeah, I mean, look, when I was a younger guy, I definitely thought I might be a plaintiff's lawyer one day, but
for the people.
but I mean, at the end of the day, again, so much more power on this side, so much more ability to affect change. So I'm glad
you've really expanded my understanding of the ecosystem. You've brought some plaintiff attorneys in, some people I've really enjoyed getting to know, even though they are on the other side of the fence. And I think it's made you a better person by inviting them on the stage to share it with them and to be having that point and counterpoint. It's been super exciting to be able to watch. I'm about ready to wrap up here. There was one thing that I wanted to say that I wasn't sure about. Automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence. ATDS seems to be the core of TCPA as it relates to what is and what isn't. I was talking to AC Evans earlier today about an upcoming webinar that we're going to do, and we're going to talk about the human element of messaging. And part of the reason why we decided to go that route was that it was based on some of the influence that you had served up previously about being cautious about that artificial, that automation, and maybe there was some misunderstanding here, but at the same point, are regulators scared of this stuff? And if so, how can we continue to evolve the technology and evolve the value that we bring as lead generators to the consumer, and not run afoul with somebody who just doesn't understand technology or understand that machine learning and artificial intelligence actually can bring more value to the consumer than just tripping them up or scamming them out of something.
Well, I mean, it's just another form of power, and power can always be exploited. And there's always going to be those who fear that a new form of power in anybody's hands is a bad thing as opposed to a good thing. And I'll be honest with you, right? The idea of machine learning and AI, that scares me a lot more than it excites me, right? Wow. If you put me, on the scale of, does Eric Troutman think that teaching machines things is a good for the world or bad for the world? I'm a lot further over here, right?
As a consumer and not a defense attorney?
As a human being, right? I mean, I think if, other than viruses, I mean, you start thinking about what the existential threat is to all mankind. And I'm not kidding, right? I mean, we all, as we talked about earlier, none of us know ourselves well enough to know how it is that our programming leads us to do the things that we do. And yet we trust ourselves to program things that are going to self-learn and be much more powerful than we are. It gives me quite a bit of pause. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. But now from a TCPA engagement perspective, look, I know ACs with Drips, one of these fantastic companies, happens to be my client. I mean, just again, an entity that is very compliance oriented. Obviously, they're leveraging AI. They're leveraging all these new developments in machine learning, and they've got a great product that is in driving consumer engagement, giving a good experience to the consumer, right? So if you take that power and you put it in good hands that are being animated with a compliance orientation and a consumer kind of centric driven approach, sure, right? It can be a win-win-win-win-win. But when you talk about it in the abstract, I mean, to me, you can't, and I would never allow myself, at least, I know that's not where you were going, but you can't take something like machine learning and paint it with one single brush and say it's definitely good. And I guess you can't say it's definitely bad, but it is something that is fraught with both extreme peril and extreme potential, and whose hand is being leveraged in and through what guidance, through prudence and justice and wisdom, and or not, is going to determine whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing for the consumer and for the world as a whole.
Eric, I got to be honest with you, man. And a lot of people may or may not like your style, but one of the things I can tell you is that one, as much as I would like to say that you're not humble, you are. When you strip back the showmanship, we strip back some of the things that you just blatantly go out there and say sometimes. What I have found, though, working with you is that one, you do have a conscience. You do worry about like your words meaning something, and that your actions are as important as your words. And so it's been really a pleasure to get to know you on that level, and to also understand that, hey, look, you do have feelings and you do care about people, and there are things that worry you in the world. It's been really nice to, and I don't want to like crush the CZAR side of what is out there. What I do want to say is that I know that when you engage with our members, when you have helped our members, when you've helped the council, amicus brief. You said something the other day in a write-up where you're like, perhaps if they would have had more amicus briefs to review.
I'm glad you caught that. I'm glad you caught that. Yeah.
Maybe the only person in the world that caught that. But what I will tell you is that I've grown to trust you, and I think that to trust an attorney is one of those things that is a huge leap of faith, but I will tell you that I certainly appreciate what you're doing for the industry first and foremost, because people look for people like you to help them, and help them on the front end, not just the back end. One of the things that I think that I've gotten from you from day one was you're as much about that front end and prevention as you are about the defense side after something's happened. And either way, I still feel like it still gives you a paycheck, but at the end of the day, some people aren't motivated that way. They just want, they want the mess up so that they can take advantage of the court, right? And for you, I don't see that. I see it a different way. Is that how you feel like you are?
I mean, again, I can't even understand an alternate perspective. To me, if you're my client, it's like I'm so honored that of all the lawyers in the world, you chose me. And I have this weird, I don't want to be excessively sentimental, but any of my clients that are listening, they kind of know me, right? It's like I view you as my friend, you're my people, you're in my circle. And when you get sued, that hurts me, right? It doesn't make me happy. I'm not like, oh, all right, I'm going to get some money out of this. It's literally the opposite. It's I have let these people down. I have not done enough to protect them, to send up the smoke signal, to put the Troutman umbrella, the Squire Patton Boggs umbrella, that these people should not be touched, while I work to help them to comply with the law. I take it very personally, frankly, when my clients get sued. I take it to a degree as a personal challenge. I don't like that at all. So yeah, I am 100% committed to, I mean, you said that I take it, compliance equal to defense. No, compliance is my number one A game, right? I want to make sure that my clients are protected, that they are safe, that they are compliant, right? Or at least if they're going to take risks, that they know exactly what risks they're taking and why. On the defense side, I view defense as a necessary evil, right? Either it's a necessary evil because you didn't hire me in time, and so you got sued for something you did before, or it's a necessary evil because there's just scumbags out there that are filing manufactured nonsense lawsuits, and we just have to do what we have to do to slice them up and make sure that doesn't happen anymore, right? But to me, the defense side is something that you have to do, but it's not something that you want to do. And I look forward every day, to what I see when I used to have the big banks, right? I put myself out of business. Every day their filings would go down to the point that people just stopped suing my clients, and I had to go out and get new clients. I had to. I mean, because I had this huge volume of cases, right? I had all these lawyers working for me, and people
So
just got
you find
tired.
yourself now in lead generation.
That's so I just move on from industry to industry. It's like I took care of this industry. They don't get sued that much. And then, as soon as I move on and represent other people, you look back at some of my former clients, and of course, they're all getting sued a whole bunch of times again because now they've got different counsel. I mean, look, to your point, people view this practice differently. People view, their role in the ecosystem of the world differently. I have certain aspirations, and I hold myself to a certain standard in that if I can't go to bed every day feeling like I've made the world a better place somehow, then I'm not satisfied with how that day has gone. And that might sound strange for a defense lawyer that specializes in TCPA, right? You might think, what are you talking about, Eric? But again, the ability to take companies, help them to be more consumer focused, help them to give people a better experience, help defend them from bad lawsuits, help defend free speech, First Amendment principles for all of us here. These things bring me joy. I mean, should they? I don't know, but they do. So there you go.
Well, man, look, Eric John Troutman, czar of TCPA, founder of TCPA, Land and World, whatever the hell it ends up being. Man, I like calling you my friend. I enjoy the conversations. I absolutely benefit from what you're bringing to the industry. I know the industry of lead generation benefits from what you're doing. I know there are others out there. I enjoy them as well, but you got a special place here with me, and I appreciate the time that you spent with us. Is there anything last minute before we wrap this up?
No, I just want to say, obviously, pay attention to tcpaworld.com. We're going to keep bringing you all the great content. I am personally quite pleased to say that my little article on the First Amendment dimensions of BAR is actually the most read article in the history of TCPA World, which means a lot, because I mean that's a little askew. That's not TCPA specific. I'm not talking about ringless voicemail or ATDS definitions. I'm talking about the First Amendment, and the fact that drew so many thousands of eyeballs. That means a lot, and that means that people are really paying attention, and they're looking at the big picture, not just what's in front of their noses. That means a lot.
I'm not going to say you've arrived, but certainly you are getting closer to your destinations, man. Eric, thank you very much for the time today. This has been great. I think people are going to appreciate knowing a little bit more about you. And if they need you, you can certainly find contact information on Squire Patton Boggs website. I know there's an email and a phone number that's listed on there. I know that you're on tcpaworld.com. You can pretty much find you on some webinar, not from the stage right now, but we're getting there. We're going to get there. We're going to get back up to those things. But man, dude, you keep giving to the industry. I certainly appreciate it. And thank you again for being our guest today.
Absolutely. Honored to be here. Thanks, Rob.
Awesome.